Hello class 11. Here I am going to start new poem The Voice of Rain by Walt Whitman. Let's get the introduction about the poem. It is written in short free verse form, which was originally published in the year 1885. Then it was reprinted in the collection of the poems book Leaves of Grass. Here the poet celebrates rain and its natural cycle for the benefit of the earth and the life that it is supporting. The poem begins with the poet asking for the identity of the soft falling rain shower. To much surprise, the rain replies to this question, and the poet here is translating the voice of the rain for the readers. Let's see. Walt Whitman was the American poet, essayist, and journalist. As a humanist, he was a part of the transition between transcendentalism and realism, which has been incorporated in his works. He is among the most influential poets in the American canon. He is often called the father of the free verse. His most popular works include Leaves of Grass, Song of Myself, or Captain, My Captain. The dominant themes that are more prevalent in his poetry are democracy, life and death cycles, individualism, and natures. Through his works, he tried to unite the society. His most popular book, Leaves of Grass, is a landmark in the history of the American literature. The poet recounts the conversation he had with the falling raindrops, to his very surprise when it responded to his question and identified itself as the poem of the earth. The poet has translated here what the rain has replied. Hence, the poem is entitled The Voice of Rain. The poem is written in the first person and in an autobiographical form. The poet describes the water cycle of the rain from evaporation to the coming down as a shower. This process goes on eternally. It starts when the raindrop emerges as a vapor out of the land and fathomless sea, and then rises towards the heaven. Once it reaches in the sky, it changes its form completely. It turns into a cloud. Then the rain quenches the thirst of the drought-afflicted lands, and its gentle shower washes away all the dust and dirt from the earth. Rain is always welcome as it rejuvenates the land. It gives lives to seeds that would remain dormant otherwise. However, rain's journey is compared to the poem that emerges from a poet's heart and travels from person to person, finally returning to the poet's heart, bringing the lots of love and affection of the listeners. Similarly, the rain rises from the heart of the sea, is essentially unchanged in the journey to the cloud and coming back to the earth. Before proceeding towards the explanation, I would like to hear comment about the title of the poem, The Voice of the Rain. As you know, only human beings have the voices. They have the ability to talk. And only we hear the sounds of non-living things or the objects. So why the poet has used here the voice word for the non-living object like rain? Through the voice of the rain, the poet wants that we human beings must learn the lesson from the elements of nature, which are providing us everything like fresh air, heat, water, without making any distinction. We should also learn the lessons from them. and adopt universal brotherhood for the betterment of our society and the mankind. See the poem now. The voice of the rain. First stanza. And who art thou? Said I to the soft falling shower, with strains to tell. Give me an answer, as here translated. I am the poem of earth, said the voice of the rain. Soft falling shower means light rainfall. Art and thou both are the archaic words used in the Old English. That means are you. Here the poet begins the poem by asking the question for the identity of the soft falling shower. As this conversation was going on only between the poet and the rain in his imagination. But to his utmost surprise, the rain responds back, which is translated here by the poet for the readers. Hence, it replied in its voice that it was the poem of the earth. It's giving happiness, joys, and fulfillment to the mankind. Eternal I rise, impalpable, out of the land and the bottomless sea, upward to heaven, once vaguely formed, altogether changed and yet the same. Eternal, that means everlasting. Impalpable, that means something that cannot be touched. Bottomless, that means very deep. Upward, that means towards the higher level. Once means from where. Vaguely, that means uselessly. Here the rain replies that it rises from the land and the deep sea in the form of intangible water vapor and then goes up to the sky. There it takes the indistinct shape in the form of the clouds. Though the rain changes its form and shape at every level, but its core matter remains the same. As vapor in the clouds contain the water, but it gets transformed into the other. Here, the words impalpable and eternal represent that nature is never fully understandable. Some part of it always remains beyond the reach of the mankind. I descend to live the droughts, amidst dust layers of the globe, and all that in them without me were seeds only, latent, unborn. Here the rain replies that when it takes a form of the water vapor and then condensed into the water droplet, it starts its back journey to the earth in the form of the rain water. This water washes away all the dust and the small particles from the earth's surface. It then satisfies the thirst of the dry earth and heals everything that is degrading and is lying lifeless beneath the earth. The rain shower removes the dust particles and make the earth pure, clean and green. However, the rain helps in the germination of the seeds which were lying dormant due to the dry spell. Hence, the rain keeps on enhancing the beauty and the purity of the earth along with preparing the life cycle of its own and all the human beings. And forever, by day and night, I give back light to my own origin and make pure and beautify it. For song issuing from its birthplace after fulfillment, wandering, reckoned or unreckoned, duly with love returns. Origin here means source. Issuing, that means starting or originating. Fulfillment, that means satisfaction or completing the cycle. Wandering, that means moving from one place to another. Reckoned, that means cared about. Unreckoned, uncared for. Duly, that means properly. In these lines, the rain concluded its speech by saying that it is always involved in the continual process of giving life to its own origin and also to the life on the earth by providing water to the dormant seeds and making this earth to look more beautiful and full of greenery. Otherwise, in the absence of it, everything would turn dull or lifeless and dust would accumulate everywhere on this earth. The last two lines of the poem, which are given within brackets, so these are not the part of the reply or the voice of the rain. So these are based upon the thoughts and the observation of the poet about the working of the rain. Here he compares the rain with the song and the poetry. According to him, when any song or the poem, it rises from its birthplace, that means from the heart of the poet or from the voice of the singer, then it moves on from person to person who likes it, hears it, feels it, and then sometimes appreciate it or sometimes criticize it. But ultimately, when it returns back to its place of origin, then it brings back to the poet or the singer love, happiness, and feeling of satisfaction. That means whether the people gives the care. According to him, when any song or poem is written, it rises from its birthplace, that means from the heart of the poet or the writer. It moves from one person to another who reads it, likes it, feels it, and then the song or the poem, it returns back to the place of the origin, that means to the poet or the writer, while bringing sometimes love and sometimes criticism, but ultimately it brings to the mind of the writer or the poet love, happiness, accomplishment, and the feeling of satisfaction. Hence, he says, just like the rain does the work selflessly for the earth, similarly, the poetry does for the mankind. After every creation, when the work of the poet or the writer, it returns back to him, it brings him happiness. Whether it responds back with criticism and suggestion, it always brings fulfillment and happiness to his mind. However, he always feels satisfied over his creation. So similarly is done by the rain. Let's know about the poetic devices used in this poem. First is personification. The rain has been personified as it has been given a voice in the poem that you have learned during the explanation. Next is metaphor. Metaphor is the implicit comparison between two things which are quite unsimilar. So see the line, I am the poem of the earth. The poet uses the metaphor to compare how the rain leaves the ground to give back. See the line, I am the poem of the earth. Here the poet uses a metaphor to compare how the rain leaves the ground to come back to it again, much like a song or a person who leaves the home only to come back after fulfilling his journey. So here it's also explained how The rain satisfied everyone. Next is parallel and the simile. So in the last two lines, the poet has drawn a parallel between the rain and the song of the poet. Next is hyperbole. The poet describes sea as bottomless, which is an exaggerated statement to bring out the desired effect. So it is example of hyperbole. Next device is imagery. Here you see the different images are used by the poet to relate rain and its effects. The readers cannot help but start imagining about the evaporation of water from the land and the sea, and then again the formation of shapeless clouds and then pattering of rain. So it clears how the dust around the earth, and again the image of sprouting of the seeds and how the greenery spread all around due to the working of the rain. So all these creates the vivid picture of the different objects in the minds of the readers. The last one is paradox. When the poet says the rain claims to give life back to its own origin by making the dry ground wet and the seeds sprout. So it surprises that how someone could give life to its own progenitor, that means life giver. So this is a paradoxical statement. So all these are the poetic devices used in this work. I hope you have well understood.